Hello and welcome back to the channel. For the past few weeks, I've been getting a lot of comments, especially from older men feeling isolated and lonely. They feel like they're stuck or are just not sure where they belong in the world. It's been weighing on me because it seems to be happening everywhere, not just here in the US, but around the world. The other day, someone sent me a video clip from a guy who was talking about some painful numbers. Men have higher rates of suicide, homelessness, and incarceration than women. He went on to read feedback he received from some women who, shockingly, were almost celebrating these stats. To them, it seemed like they were glad to see men struggle. And honestly, it's no wonder that good men in this world are backing away, starting to believe they're caught in something unfair and insurmountable. Now, ladies, if you're listening, I want to offer a thought. This might not be well received, but I think it's worth sharing. If you want equality, and yet feel that the only way to achieve it is to tear men down to your level, that's not equality, it's resentment disguised as justice. A person who has to pull others down just to feel equal isn't really building equality. They're creating bitterness and dependence, and no one comes out better for it. Men, if you're out there feeling isolated, lonely, or struggling to find connections, know this: there are still good people out there. Good, solid people who value themselves and others. They're out there, they're just harder to find these days. But it's worth the search, even if it takes some time. Now, look, I'm not a psychologist or a trained counselor. I'm just Uncle Charlie, sitting here with a cup of coffee and a cigar, talking with you about life. Speaking of cigars, I've got a Perdomo Inmenso 70 here. It's a big one, but to be honest, I've been a little disappointed with it. It's got the right size and feel, but it just doesn't quite deliver like other Perdomos I've had. It's still decent enough to enjoy with my coffee, though. Anyway, let's talk about loneliness. I want to get into this because loneliness is one of those things that can eat at you from the inside. And if you're feeling lonely, it's usually because you're not connecting with people on a deeper level, be it emotional, mental, or spiritual. But here's the kicker: the one person who's always with you, the one person you can't escape, is yourself. If there's one thing I believe can make a difference, it's learning to be comfortable with that. Learning to be your own best companion can make the difference between feeling alone and feeling at peace. Now, don't get me wrong. I know it's not ideal to be alone. In the Bible, God looked at Adam and said it wasn't good for man to be alone. So he made a companion. But it's also possible to go through life without that close, ideal companionship, if that's what it takes to avoid compromising yourself. And sometimes, being on your own is better than being in bad company. A lot of people, men and women alike, choose less than ideal relationships just to have someone there. Why? Because they don't feel at ease with their own company. They don't want to sit alone with their thoughts, so they'll settle for anything to fill that space, even if it's harmful. I'd like to suggest something different. Try becoming someone you actually enjoy being around. Start with building a foundation that's strong enough to stand on its own. Here's something I mean by that. Think about what you'd want in a friend, someone you'd want to spend time with. I'd imagine you'd want honesty, right? So start with being honest with yourself. There's an old saying about speaking the truth, and it applies here, especially when it comes to looking inward. Be honest with yourself about who you are, what you want, and where you've been. Now, I'll be the first to admit that sometimes looking at the truth about ourselves isn't easy, but it's a foundation you can stand on. For example, I've got things in my past I'm not proud of, mistakes I've made, people I've let down, but I don't lie to myself about them. I don't sit here making excuses or shifting the blame. I own up to them, because it's part of being honest with myself. And here's the key: once you own up to them, you've got to forgive yourself. You've got to allow yourself the freedom to move forward, to leave those past versions of yourself in the past. Because if you can't forgive yourself, you'll never find peace in your own company. If you sit by yourself and spend your time going over every mistake you've ever made, that's no way to live. Instead, accept that you were human then and are human now. That doesn't mean excusing yourself, but it does mean giving yourself a little grace. And from there, you can start to find that being with yourself isn't a punishment, but rather a chance to grow. The next thing I'd say is be encouraging to yourself. A good friend is someone who supports you and encourages you to keep going when things get tough. And if you don't have that kind of person around you, then you need to become that person for yourself. Take the time to encourage yourself, to tell yourself that there's a way out, that things can get better, that you don't have to stay where you are if you're not happy. Sometimes that means pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, even if it's hard. You know, I've seen a lot of folks say, Charlie, you're out here in the country, you don't know what it's like for us in the city. And I get it. I know cities can feel like they're locking you in. But here's the thing, if you want out, and if you're willing to make sacrifices, you can find a way. It might mean selling most of what you have, packing a bag, and starting fresh. I don't say that lightly, but sometimes a clean slate is the best way forward. A lot of people think they're stuck because they don't see another way, but sometimes getting out of a bad situation requires courage and sacrifice. And that can start by being willing to let go of what you think you need to feel secure. In my younger days, I hitchhiked from Tennessee to Wyoming with little more than what I had in my pockets. It wasn't easy, but I made it, and it taught me that change is possible if you're willing to take a leap. Now, I understand the desire for companionship. I really do, but let me tell you, sacrificing your sense of self, your spirit, just to have someone to pass the time with, it's not worth the cost. There's a heavy price to pay for that kind of compromise. Be your own man. Stand strong on your own values. Don't let bitterness or negativity take root in you because of what others might be doing. You don't need to go along with this destructive movement out there. There's a difference between standing up for yourself and tearing others down. The world doesn't need more division. Be a man who's willing to step back from the noise and instead focus on being a solid, grounded individual. As men, it's easy to get swept up in reacting to things. When the pendulum swings too far one way, our instinct is to pull it back hard the other way. But I'll tell you this, don't let that pendulum swing out of control. Don't go from one extreme to the other, from feeling hurt or resentful to lashing out in anger. We're not at war with women. We're not here to get back at anyone. We're here to be strong, grounded individuals who can stand on our own 2 feet. There are voices out there that thrive on stirring up anger and resentment. There are figures online who will tell you that the only way forward is to strike back or take what's yours. But that's not the path forward. The way forward is to be steady, to be strong, and to let that speak for itself. Imagine yourself as a warrior in a garden, a person who is strong, capable, but peaceful at heart. Be that man who can handle what life throws at him without letting anger or bitterness control him. Be the steady rock that others can rely on, even when the world around you seems to be falling apart. I hope this helps in some small way. I know it may not answer all the questions you have or solve all the struggles you're facing. But if there's one thing I'd say to take from this, it's to focus on becoming someone you enjoy being around. Build a life that you're proud of, and let the rest fall into place. Stay strong, fellas. The world needs men who can stand firm and hold on to what's true, who don't bend or break in the storm. Keep going, and remember, you're not alone in this. Take care, and we'll catch you next time.